Hello and welcome everybody to the Bilateral Chambers Global Rebound series of webinars. My name is Aida Araisi and I thank you very much for tuning in today. We have an incredible panel and the topic of the day is reimagining energy. We are at a pivotal point in history where we have governments, NGOs, global financial institutions, grassroots organizations, all aligned to address and expect climate change action. They also want the fossil fuel industry to be a part of that solution. And so today we have an esteemed panel of people that have collectively over 100 years of experience in scientific, economic, and finance experience with their respective careers that are going to give us their assessment and their vision for the future of how the fossil fuel industry can be part of that transition and part of that solution. Our moderator and co-panelist today is Mr. Nejib Zaafrani, and he'll introduce the rest of the panel. But let me tell you a little bit about him. He was the chairman and managing director of Shell Abu Dhabi. He had over a 30-year span career with Royal Dutch Shell. He's spoken at Davos. He's been in every part of the globe where energy is extracted. And after retiring from Shell, he was appointed as Secretary General and CEO of the Supreme Council for Energy for the Dubai government as they were addressing their own diminishing energy reserves. And he was part of their strategic vision on addressing that. I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Nejib so he can carry on this incredible topic. And I encourage everyone to submit their questions and to be a part of the discussion. Mr. Nejib, thank you for joining us from Dubai.
Thank you, Aida, for the introduction. It is an honor and privilege to moderate this excellent panel that brings together the presidents of two prominent independent global energy industries, leading professional societies. Under their leadership, some 160,000 engineers and scientists around the world, covering over 140 countries, a great global brain powerhouse for innovation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Bilateral Chamber of Commerce for organizing this great webinar. So I would like to introduce our panelists. So please welcome our distinguished panelist, Dr. Kamel Ben-Naceur, 2022 President of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, SPE, and Mr. Maurice Nessim, Chairman and President of the Society of Exploration and Geophysicists, SCG. Both they bring a breadth and depth of diverse knowledge, expertise, and experience from the energy industry, well outlined in their respective biography. I presume you had the chance to go through them. So before asking Dr. Kamel Ben-Naceur and Mr. Maurice Nessim to share their insight on the recent developments, including the Biden administration-led Leaders Summit on Climate and the force shaping the global energy transition to a net carbon neutral future, I will share some opening remarks. We should be optimistic about the future of the energy industry. We have great faith in the brilliant minds of scientists and engineers who will turn the challenges of energy transition into great opportunities during the journey to year 2050 and beyond. By deploying their innovative thinking through cutting-edge technology, as they have done in the past decades, the global political will and alignment are taking shape with the mobilization of significant capital investment for green project development. This undoubtedly will help accelerate the energy transition. The leveraging of the various sources of clean energy supply, including the decarbonization of hydrocarbon resources through the full life cycle from production to consumer, combined with electrical mobility and energy storage developments, will play a pivotal role in meeting the world demand growth in 2050 horizon. A holistic or an integrated approach to global clean energy supply mix to balance the demand growth through the potential removal of energy waste and pushing more and more for energy efficiency through adequate policies, regulations, technologies, and of course, raising the energy user awareness, with the aim to strive in a potential net carbon neutral world in the coming 3 decades. So our panelists will include in their discussions the need for change of the way we use energy, the development and deployment of carbon capture, utilization, and storage. They will also share with us the SPE and SDG sustainability initiatives, the industry challenges with COVID-19 to continue to fuel the world, the renewable complementarity to hydrocarbon system, the digital transformation and data sciences, and the role of big oil in technology and innovation. Just to mention a few, but of course they will be covering much more than that. So we'll have about 35 minutes of discussions with the panelists and 10 minutes to share closing insight, thoughts, and perspective, and followed by Q&A with the participants. So I would like to start with Dr. Ben-Naceur. Can you please discuss and share your insight and broad overview of the transition currently underway in the global energy industry and its long-term impact? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nejib, for the very kind introduction, and thanks, Ida and the Bilateral Chamber for the invitation. It's really a privilege and an honor to be in what you describe as being the Century Club, because we bring 100 years between the three of us in terms of experience, so we call it the Century Club. And you mentioned, Nejib and Ida, a number of key developments that are happening. And I would go a little bit further in time. About 6 years ago, there were two very important events that happened in the world. The first one was the meeting of the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals that were agreed upon with clear objective by 2030. And Sustainable Development Goal 7, principally, but many other ones, because they're all interrelated, are actually calling for use of energy in a much wider way, because the world needs energy, but also in a different way, with one, a different carbon footprint, and two, a different carbon intensity of the economies. So that was the first call of action. The second call of action was the Paris meeting, the COP21, and at that time I was with the International Energy Agency, and we contributed to some of the modeling that was used, and especially to generate the 2-degree case. And at that time, 1.5 was considered to be a very significant stretch. And so the main statement was to be below 2 degrees. And so these were the two first events. The third one, which has been much closer to us, is the COVID-19 situation, which has had a tremendous impact in the world's lives, but also in the way people are working, in the people are trading and socializing and studying and so on. So those three are actually the basis of the transformation. And what has happened over the last couple of years is that a number of the key economies around the world have actually made announcements to reduce their carbon footprint, and with targets to be net zero emitters by 2050. And so if you put the global economic power of those countries, and that's not even including the US, we have more than 50% of the world's economy that has agreed to those net zero emission targets. And with the President Biden's meeting, we expect that number to increase significantly further. So that's the background. But one thing that is very clear is that the world needs energy. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the energy transition takes quite some time. And if we look over the last 30 years, and we look at the percentage of the fossil fuels in the primary energy mix, it has been pretty much around the same number, between 80 and 82%. What has happened actually, which was not good, is that oil share has declined, but the coal share has increased. And we all know that coal has a much larger emission, greenhouse gas emission per unit of energy generated. So we need to change the course of action. And if we want to fuel the world's economy, we need to have more energy, but we need to use it more efficiently and to have it in a cleaner way. There have been a number of scenarios that have been developed, and I want to highlight two main scenarios in addition to the business as usual. The first one is the sustainable development scenario, which meets both the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goal. And in that one, what we will see is that the investment in oil and gas has to be in the next decade about the same or even higher level than it was just before COVID. So that we need to continue the investment in oil and gas. Now, if we look at the last scenario that was introduced by the IEA yesterday, what happens is that in the net zero emission target, the projection is that during this decade, we will still need quite a significant investment in oil and gas. And in terms of the employment, we should not decrease the employment. We should at least keep it to the same level compared to pre-COVID. So that is an extremely important message to our membership. The world needs to go back to pre-COVID level and regain some of those jobs. And this is a message, a positive message. Now, there was another message that was passed by the IEA, and which is that we don't need much more exploration or more green fields to be announced or to be launched. We think as an organization is that if we want the transition to happen with the least cost, we need to make sure that we maintain capacity in oil and gas for the coming 2 decades. Let's not forget that every year we lose, due to field decline, the equivalent of the production of a country like Iraq, which is in the 3 to 4 million barrels per day. This is what we lose every day. So if we don't do new projects, we would be reducing, and this would have a very negative impact on the prices and on the balance of supply and demand. And just one last comment is that if we push very significantly the investment in renewable, we are going to create tensions on other minerals like lithium or other rare metal minerals, and that would imply an increase in prices of renewables because we don't have the capacity. So we have to be careful on the interlinkage between all those impacts. So if we take the sustainable development scenario, what it tells us is that we need to reduce the amount of coal, unabated coal, and we need to increase in a number of areas our investment. First is energy efficiency. And this is a message that we as an industry are taking it very seriously, and there are very significant efforts going there. The second one is that every single sector from the production side has to decrease their greenhouse gas emissions. We have a number of initiatives in the industry through organizations like IPCA and OGP to reduce those emissions and actually be extremely transparent on the way we measure them and on the way we abate them. And then the next wedge of decarbonization is going to come from the use of carbon capture and utilization and storage, CCUS, where both societies, the SEG and SPE, have all the required skills in terms of subsurface sciences to evaluate how to do CCUS in a stable and safe and efficient way. And then finally, the transition will also depend on hydrogen. And there are several colors of hydrogen, and I would highlight one of them, which is the blue hydrogen, which is production of zero carbon hydrogen associated with CCUS. And this is also an area where the oil and gas industry will be playing a pivotal role. So these were my introductory remarks, and I leave it back to you, Maurice.
Okay, thanks, Kamel. I would like to, would you like to say something on this question, Mr. Maurice? I've got another question for you, but would you like to add on what Kamel just said?
First, thank you very much, Aida and Nejib and Kamel. I think Kamel have covered quite a lot, and you know, I would be happy to answer another question, and maybe I can add in later some more comments.
Yeah, actually, I picked up this question who came from ahead of time from one of the participants, which he asked that if you can please elaborate on how all the oil and gas companies, service providers, and professionals of different disciplines should prepare themselves to adapt in and stay abreast of the global energy industry transition and development and progress of the energy industry in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. That's an excellent question. I believe that it is a practical one also. In other words, what can we do as earth scientists and engineers in all these organizations? So generally, you know, like as Dr. Kamel mentioned, you know, like energy is needed. We need energy. You know, we've got quite a large number of now population in the world, 7.7, close to 7.7 billion people, and energy is very important to also to help in ending poverty, and that's a responsibility for all the energy providers and all the different entities that you mentioned that are working in energy. Now, energy have been always, you know, like oil and gas and carbon, as Dr. Kamel was mentioning, and it was relatively cheap, and everybody was relatively happy in the past about the contribution. But now, there is a demand not only being cheap, but also need to be clean. All the impact on the climate change is quite substantial, and all the reports and all the studies that happened makes us quite worried that, you know, in some time close, you know, maybe 50 years time or so, the reports that are out that says that there is quite a large percentage, close to 25 to 30% of all the different plants and animals that could be at risk. And then all the interest and the direction changed to, we not only need to have energy which is cheap, but also clean. And of course, when we went into the clean side and the renewables and so on, then the factor came, which was quite interesting, is the reliability of those clean different types of energies, and how could it be, not intermittent, and the accessibility of it and so on. Now, what can we do as different organizations? So, first we have to recognize that energy transition is a reality that is accelerating, and we need to take action. And if we don't take action, then that's going to be taking action now. That's going to be quite difficult. Now I'd like to start by let's say, if we're talking about the earth scientists that are working in these different organizations, it starts by the education. So there is also a responsibility from the academia to start looking at what sort of education need to happen in order to equip or skill or reskill the different earth scientists and new graduates that are coming out into those companies, and to see what can be done from a technology perspective. So technology is a big event. The big event that happened in the US that helped in improving, on the carbon, the climate change, was the fracking and being able to get natural gas, which replaced coal, and that helped a lot in reducing the carbon. Even the quotas that were there was supposed to be for 2030 and was achieved in 2020, and that's a big technological event. So what other technological events that need to happen that we need to work on? So that's the academia, and also, as Dr. Kamel said, for the different professional societies like SPE and like SEG and AAPG and EAGE and all the rest of the respectable societies that look after technology. So that's from, let's say, from the geoscientist and engineer side, technology and what can happen. Now, the different energy companies that are contributing to helping in the right direction of energy transition actually are spending, some of them already recognize it, and they are putting lots of efforts and money in and goals for their companies, like Exxon and Chevron and Shell and BP and others that spend lots of now. First, they made a decision. Second, they are putting some policies. They're putting some real investments. They are looking at different technologies, and they are helping there. Of course, governments and different organizations put policies. Policies, help a lot, and that have a big impact on the energy transition. I think we're looking forward to the policies in the US that's going to be even stricter in that direction, and lots of other countries are doing the same to get the clean energy and being more reliable also. It's going to need a very big investment. It's not going to be talk. It's going to need lots of money to be put in for technology. It's also going to need lots of collaborations between different knowledge, different organizations to be able to come up with, complement each other. So it's not the time for, like strict competition. It has to be what I would call a co-opetition, where it is collaborating between the different competitors and different either companies. So, like the IPs that lots of people are putting, it should not be for stopping others, but actually for recognizing certain technologies for collaboration. So I think I'm also very positive, Nejib, about the future, but there is lots of actions. It should not be, as they say, you know, like it's not going to be by elimination of oil and gas. It's going to be by innovation and by creativity, and that's where the change is going to happen. Moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Really quite an insight. At least it gives hope and also passion for the young generation to really shape up their skills, their knowledge and expertise to drive this transition by using, you know, as we said, their innovative thinking, but also, you know, deploying this technology that is developing as we go. I mean, if you look back ourselves 30 years ago, we were doing cartoon geological 3-dimension. We didn't have the 3D, we had 2D, you know, when I started my career in 1978. So when you look at it today, it's science fiction in 1978, it's reality today. So we're projecting to 2050, so many things that today we say science fiction will be reality in the future. So I think the young generation in the energy sector, and particularly in the oil and gas, it's very fascinating because, you know, we talk about carbon emissions and so on. Yes, but we can turn it around and decarbonize the hydrocarbon through the wellhead all the way to the consumer. What I mean the consumer, not at the pump, at the house when you get electricity. And that's where we see that the major big oil, they're changing their business model. They're becoming more an integrated company to have more a role at the power stations where the molecules of gas comes and get transformed into, you know, electrons, and the rest goes into that. So to capture it and integrate. So you make a very strong point, you see. The collaboration is extremely important. They should not be competing. The only way to make it simple is by collaboration in terms of IP, in terms of technology, because the business models of the energy, it's segmented. So the major companies realize they have to integrate, to work on the whole value chain. So they have to really also learn to work in consortium. The big oil have experience of that in the oil and gas, where they work with the majors in consortiums. So, you know, the fundamentals are there, but they can really adapt to the needs of today, really with this global climate change. So just to move on the questions, maybe I will ask Kamel, you know, about the impact of emerging advanced technologies, so digital transformation and data science, IT, machine learning, predictive analytics, reservoir analysis, and other advanced applications. I mean, there is a lot of developments taking place on a global level, but a lot of those technology developments can add value to the, you know, the energy sector and the oil and gas. And there is specific technologies, you know, where maybe later on, Maurice can add on dealing with the mother nature, which is, which I call them rock doctors, you know, and nature we know. I have learned through my career that nature challenges us. So continuously we try to learn, but then we should integrate those pieces of technology. So what's your take, Kamel, on you know, the impact of emerging advanced technology on this transition period?
So that's a very important question. And our industry is not perceived as moving very fast in terms of adoption of technology, and I fully disagree with that statement. I think that we have been embracing information technologies at a much faster pace than almost every other industry. I fully agree with Maurice about some of his comments about the technology. And I'm just going to give you an example. I started in the oil and gas industry in 1981. At that time, almost all the industry was still using perforated cards to enter input to computers. 81. 20 years later, and Maurice knows very well this center, it's in Gatwick, and he was president of this organization. We were doing virtual reality simulation of CO2 movement subsurface using 4D seismic. And this was in the first CCUS project. And with our customer, we were taking university graduates and so on. And their reaction was just, wow, you can do that? You can see the movement of CO2 subsurface just using this virtual reality, and you can navigate in this space. And that happened only over 20 years. I think that going forward, the capabilities that new technologies that like artificial intelligence, like quantum computing will allow us to take orders of magnitude more speed in terms of resolving some of the big fields simulations, and also do advanced physics on instruments that would go in the oil and gas wells. And so these technologies have an enormous potential impact. Other technologies that we see as having a significant impact are material science. You have also the space imaging of what's happening at the surface. So you have companies that can pinpoint any place on Earth which would have abnormal greenhouse gas emissions. And all that is going to have a fantastic impact in terms of, one, measuring, and second thing is allowing the industry to address the issues. So all these on the innovation front, and I think it's extremely exciting. You have other technologies like 3D printing at the well site, which would have also a great impact. So you can design very sophisticated pieces of equipment with very little time requirements. So that is going to increase in efficiency. And finally, the ability to work remotely with teams across the globe will certainly help improve the quality of life of our engineers and geoscientists. This will also help improve the diversity, the gender diversity of our industry, which was lagging in the previous decades, but is improving significantly. And by the way, the SPE has created more than 30 different diversity and inclusion groups around the world to help improve the gender balance in our industry. So all these innovation will certainly have a great impact.
Okay, thank you, Kamel. Indeed, you mentioned key technologies like 3D printing that now we can use it at the well site, and also another thing that, working remotely across the world, we are interconnected, and that is a big plus. We didn't have that when we were engineers ourselves. So the next one is really specific to really the geoscientists. So this is a question to Mr. Maurice. So what is the impact of emerging advanced technology on the role of geophysicists, geologists, engineers, and other highly skilled jobs?
Okay, thank you. You know, like, I think it's related to also the first question that Dr. Kamel was answering. You know, the challenge that we have now as geoscientists and engineers working in generally, mainly in oil and gas, is that in the past, since 2014, there was, you know, there was some, I would say there is some bad news, and then there is some good news. So the bad news is that, you know, from the spend on the upstream side, or the exploration and so on, went down significantly since 2014. So the spend is, you know, went down by 40%. Now, the impact on the research and development in the subsurface knowledge went down by 60%. And also the amount of people and expertise in the field of geoscience and engineering and knowledge of subsurface were very reduced, you know, like reduced significantly, you know, close to reduction of 40% since that time. So we have an enormous reduction in the power of knowledge, research, and also spend. So, and of course, it impacted the reserves that were found. So the amount of reserves that's found is now down less by a significant amount, 30 to 40% since the discoveries of 2014. If you look at how things are developing, you'll find that all of that has an impact on the ability of the world to be able to find more reserves. Now, the good news part is that what you were discussing earlier is on the digital transformation. And in that, you know, like independently, while the oil and gas and generally in the energy sector, you know, things were going down from a spend, from research, from also employment and so on. And everybody knows how lots of people have suffered from that. The digital world have been developing like crazy, right? And that's an independent industry. Trillions of dollars have been spent there, which created lots of opportunities in data sciences and also in those amazing technology that we can build on. So although we did not really invest too much in it as the sector of energy, but it has been going because there is lots of other applications. And I agree with Dr. Kamel that, you know, the geoscientists and engineers have developed a lot in the digital world, and that actually where most of the data sciences came from, and then it took a different path, which is great. Now it's available, we build on. So in other words, the good news is that the progress we did on the, you know, like on the oil and gas side, that took 40 years, now, you know, in order to get into technologies in renewables and technology in all the additional sciences, additional resources that we want to put some emphasis on, is going to take much shorter. But it's going to need to be built on technology that is quite different. And that's where the reskilling is going to happen. Now, all the different companies and societies and are aware of this, right? Are aware that you need to do something different. We talk about, for example, the carbon capture and utilization and sequestration. This is an area where, okay, you've got oil and gas. I think about it in a simple way. So excuse my comparison would be, you know, like, okay, it's like medicine. Everybody is, you know, getting medicines. They know that it has some side effects. You know, it's chemicals. People take it, but there are side effects to it. Now, you know, you want to see how could you reduce those side effects, which is the carbon emissions, right? Doesn't mean that you won't need to have the oil and gas. It's as Dr. Kamel said and yourself that Nejib, that this is a necessity. now the acceptance of having oil and gas as part of the energy mix is important. But now we need to think a little bit outside the box of what else we can work on that would be cleaner and reduce the side effects of the oil and gas. And the reduction of oil and gas side effects, I mean, Dr. Kamel mentioned something very interesting. This, by the way, he's talking about 20 years ago. You know, there was already lots of development in reservoir modeling and reservoir monitoring, and the ability to be able to see the carbon and be able to capture and find the right place to store. So now we need this, lots of this research and work has been put down because of the investment, lack of investments. So now we need to put more investments in that field of how to support side effects and remove those side effects. We know how to do it. We need much more investments in it. And our geoscientists and engineers actually have the knowledge, need to be, of course, reskilled in certain ways to also involve in it the data science and ability to speed up that process into a much more than 1 or 2 projects. It needs to be much, much more than that. So I think the knowledge side is very important. We should never forget about this. You know, so whoever, you know, listening from engineers and geoscientists, knowledge is extremely important of the subsurface. That's never going to go away. The digital part is the area where you need to, if you're one of those knowledgeable people, you need to learn more on data sciences in order to be able to speed up the development. And if you're the other way around, if you're a data scientist, you know, you need to learn a lot about the subsurface in order to learn more and impact the carbon solutions, I call it, moving forward, plus the new energy. And when we talk about the new energy, you know, this is very important on, as you said, electrification, and also the hydrogen and lithium as carriers, and all these technologies are going to be very important.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maurice. I think now we're reaching, I mean, we could have a lot. This is very exciting discussion, I must say. But we've got to give the chance to the participant to ask questions. I think if I sum it up, it's very exciting what came out from the panel input. So it's the end of the day. Yes, there is challenges, but the engineers and the scientists with their innovation and leveraging technology, they can turn them into great opportunities. And we covered a number of things on technology, on basically the policies that the states have to put, of course, and the industry will basically adjust on the basis of the technology, the policies to move as fast as possible. So just to give the time for the Q&A, do we have questions?
Yes, there are a few. So thank you. That was an incredible discussion. Learned a lot. We do have a couple of questions. One of them is specifically about the role of the NOCs, like an Aramco or an ADNOC. And the person would like to know, what role are they playing in the energy transition? And are they acting proactively along with what is needed to move forward? Are they part of the solution?
Yeah, so perhaps I can make a couple of points. The first one is that the NOCs, especially from the Middle East, have actually one of the lowest greenhouse gas emissions by barrel produced. And this is compared to other fields in the world. Even with that, they have taken the steps, proactive steps, to reduce even further their greenhouse gas emissions and be at the very, very bottom in terms of footprint. The second point is that companies like Saudi Aramco has been one of the founders of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, which is a group of companies that are acting together on the sustainability of the oil and gas industry from a climate side. Then the next point is that at a country level, Saudi Arabia has, through the G20 work, developed very interesting concepts of the CCE, which is circular carbon economy, which includes a whole set of implications of reducing, recycling, reusing in the energy world that really are extraordinary. And I want to salute organizations like CAPSARC in Saudi Arabia that has led some of the work. And I would direct our listeners to the fantastic website where you will find great insights on this carbon circular economies, is how to use efficiently oil and gas resources. And then we have companies like the ADNOC that has been over the last 5 years undergoing a complete transformation, and they have been able to put together the first CCUS project with a steel plant, which is a Riyadh project in near Abu Dhabi, with 850,000 tons of CO2. And now their objective is to jump to 5 million tons of CO2 captured every year, which would put them among the top 3 countries in the world in terms of CO2 capture and storage. So companies, NOCs are acting quite swiftly in this front.
Yeah, I just want to add with just historical background. I think Abu Dhabi is one of the first who captured all their associated gas and created a gas processing company in the late 70s, started in the 80s. So on that front, they turned the methane into great value in generating, electricity and feeding the industry. And just to reinforce what Kamel just said, back in 2000, I was promoting under the company I was working for, the whole vision for the region, which is the Gulf region, to really build a transnational infrastructure to capture, compress the CO2 from the power plants who are on the Gulf side, on the Gulf side, where the fields, about 50 to 100 kilometers away. The one who picked it up is Abu Dhabi. That was 2006. So, and Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, when I presented it in the research center of Shell, I was a vice president for new business development. He captured and he understood this is very strategic. And okay, it took some time, but they made it happen, because between the will to do things and make them happen, you need also a lot of other skills and aligning the parties. And they succeeded. I think they should be congratulated on that. But having said that, they can really work now with their great relationship on the transnational infrastructure that they turn, because let's say the carrot for the region at that time, 2003, we did a scouting study, is 100 billion additional oil for all fields below 1 billion barrel that have been discriminated. So in terms of additional recovery between 5 to 15%, we're talking about big volumes while we re-injecting and storing the CO2 to get a miscible process. So yeah, I think the region is doing quite a lot. And as Kamel have mentioned, the two examples about Aramco and ADNOC.
Very good. If I could offer Maurice one last question about a vision of what's going to happen, or what do we have in store for us in 30 years in terms of a mix of oil and gas, wind, solar, nuclear? I saved the best for last. Maurice, if you could look in your and tell me a bit about what you envision, and then we can wrap up because we're running out of time.
50 years from now, I don't think I'll be around, so nobody can blame me.
30 years.
But I think the aspiration is to have 50% or more to be from renewables, and would be also, the important part is, the reduction of the carbon and oil and gas. I expect that's going to continue being important part of the mix. And that's part of what I would call, you need to have this energy education, because there is lots of energy literacy, if I may, where people don't realize the importance of the mix. So maybe 50% would be from oil and gas, with the bigger part on the natural gas side, and then the rest of the renewables, the wind and solar. And also we should not forget about nuclear, that it's going to be part of that mix. I don't think there is energy transition, without also keeping in mind the nuclear side, that's an important cleaner energy. And the last point I want to mention is that one have to keep in mind that we don't want to have renewables of clean energy for the atmosphere and for the air, and do the opposite for the earth, where we do these huge mining and disposal of those panels and turbines and other things that come with that. So this would have also some side effects that we need to think from a technological perspective, how to manage that. Thank you, Aida.
Okay.
Dr. Kamel, Dr. Kamel, do you agree with Maurice's mix that oil and gas would still be in 30 years, 50% of the mix?
So I fully agree. And my hope is that in 30 years, we could have a nice meeting between Maurice, Nejib, and myself, and Aida. We will call it the 2-century club, because we would have But on a different side, at the SPE, and I wanted to perhaps finish with that, sustainability is a core value. We have dedicated resources on sustainability. We are launching a big program which is called Gaia. And the objective of Gaia is to show that oil and gas is critical, even the linchpin, to transforming the energy system in becoming diverse, integrated, clean, and accessible for all.
Very good.
That's wonderful. Mr. Nejib, thank you for your excellent input and your excellent moderation, and I'll leave it to you to adjourn this meeting.
I think we should thank our panelists who provided a lot of good insight, and then also raised basically more than hope, for the new generation. If I'm in my 20s, I wanted to hear the seniors, what they think. They have gone through it, and all of us, we went through it. So they have a bright future, and that's what they have heard today. But of course, they have to really take, in hand their innovative thinking. So they have to really create and innovate in a way that we turn those challenges into opportunities. So we thank them all, and we thank, of course, the Bilateral Chamber for organizing this. Should be thanked by all the participants and ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. So not elimination, but innovation is,
That's right.
the theme. Thank
Yeah.
you all. Good night in Abu Dhabi and good night in Dubai and good day, Mr. Maurice here in Houston. And thank you all to the participants.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Shukran. Bye-bye.